Hi, I'm Luke Gilfillan. Welcome to the Lounge with Luke Gilfillan. Hello and welcome to the Lounge with Luke Gilfillan. Today we're going to be going over global, Chicago, and local news. So first off, we're going to start off with the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, which has been lingering through Congress for actually not too long in comparison with most bills that go through Congress. So we're going to start it off, this is from Amy Quinn at the New York Times. China said on Monday that it would suspend visits to Hong Kong by American warships and impose sanctions on several United States-based non-governmental groups in a mostly symbolic retaliation for tough human rights legislation President Trump signed last week. It wasn't actually that tough. All that was really in the legislation was the United States saying that China should reaffirm the deal that it made in 1990 with Great Britain when Hong Kong was transferred to China. Hong Kong's pretty distinct from China because after one of the Opium Wars that China fought with Great Britain, I believe this is the case, correct me in the comments if I'm mistaking it. Either way, they gave the UK, or it wasn't the UK at the time, Great Britain two, was it two? I'm pretty sure it was just Hong Kong, but I'm not sure what the deal was with Macau. I know there's semi-autonomous. I'm not sure if that was with a different country, but either way, Hong Kong was transferred to Britain after the first Opium War, I believe, and then since then it was run by Great Britain mostly as like a trade province, I believe, and then so it developed mostly English language. I think they speak English and Chinese there. I think most everyone there knows English, but they all probably know Chinese. Either way, so it was semi-autonomous, so there is some cultural differences between it and the mainland. A major part of that is its the political affiliations of its people. They're not really as into communism as the mainland is, or at least whatever China's communism is. And so President Trump, after unanimous support from Congress, signed this bill, which basically said, China's been trampling in the 1990 agreement, they should reinstate that, and basically saying that the United States stands by democracy in Hong Kong too. So Chinese officials got somewhat upset by that. Chinese state-run media is shellacking that on various social media platforms. They're really upset about that, and they're writing a ton of opinion pieces about how evil Western interference is. Hua Chenying, a spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, said, without citing evidence, that these groups supported anti-China forces in creating chaos in Hong Kong and encouraged them to engage in extreme violent criminal acts. So, basically the going line by Chinese state-run media here is that these protests are entirely due to Western influences, which doesn't really make sense because other than signing this bill, President Trump hasn't really said anything about Hong Kong, to the frustration of a lot of people. He sort of just stayed silent on it, probably to get a better trade deal, because that's sort of what his main concern is. And Chinese media is suggesting that this is entirely due to foreign influence, which it clearly is not. That was sort of reaffirmed by the elections that just happened in Hong Kong, in which pro-democracy groups, or pro-democracy candidates for the most part, I don't know what they call the party exactly, I think it's I'm not sure, I can't find the exact name of the party, but either way, those party candidates got voted in by overwhelming margins in the city council elections, but those people don't really have much power. It's mostly symbolic position that takes care of like the roads and traffic lights in Hong Kong. So China has responded to the new legislation with strong rhetoric, but the measures announced Monday suggested that Beijing was unwilling to let the dispute spill over into its trade negotiations with the United States. So, the conflict over Hong Kong is unlikely to settle into the trade negotiations, which sort of opens the door for maybe the president and more politicians to take some more jabs at our greatest geopolitical enemy in what is essentially one of their biggest conflicts of probably the decade. China has also previously denied permission to American naval vessels to dock in Hong Kong at times of heightened tensions between the two countries, most recently in August. So what they did is not too special. They just said, oh, American naval vessels, and I believe other military vehicles and whatever are not allowed to operate near Hong Kong, which wasn't... it's not that big a deal. It happens often. Willie Lam said it's nothing new. I think the major purpose of this is rhetorical, to try and convince the world that the U.S., whether it's the CIA or NGOs, is trying to foment a color revolution in Hong Kong, which is the going line. It's that, no, people aren't upset with us. We're great. It's only foreign influence that is causing these protests. But with China's economy slowing and new tariffs looming, the rhetoric can only go so far. China really needs to stick to its trade deal, Mr. Lam said. So, that's what's going on in Hong Kong. I just picked that story because, I don't know, I find it interesting. In Chicago news, this is actually pretty big news. Mayor Lori Lightfoot fires Chicago's police superintendent weeks before his retirement. Eddie Johnson intentionally lied to me. That's on the Chicago Tribune. I think it's on the front. I think it's the leading article. It's by Gregory Pratt, John Byrne, and Jeremy Gorner, which is a big deal if they're putting 3 reporters on it because, the Chicago Tribune is a relatively large newspaper. They don't have as many employees, and usually 3 indicates that the newspaper figures it's a pretty big story. 3 reporters on it. Or multiple reporters in general. 3 is pretty big. Mayor Lori Lightfoot fired Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson effective immediately Monday for intentionally misleading her and the public about his conduct when he was found asleep in his running vehicle at a stop sign after a late weeknight out in October. So, a few things to note here is... Is it his police vehicle? I can't remember. I thought I read that, but it might not be. This moment needs to be a turning point for the Chicago Police Department and the way things are done in the city, said Lightfoot, emphasizing that culture change must take place. So I think the message she's trying to send here is, I don't care if you're the superintendent or a low-level police officer, if you're engaging in blatant misconduct, you're going to be fired. Whether you're 3 months from retirement or 2 days from retirement, it's irrelevant. So the stunning announcement came just weeks after Lightfoot held what she referred to Monday as a celebratory press conference to announce Johnson's retirement by year's end, after about 3.5 years at the helm. So yeah, he was retiring. Everyone really knew about this, and the big news about it was who she was going to hire as his replacement. She didn't really answer those questions when asked. And it's sort of shocking news that she's going to fire him a month since he's going to retire, but he did deserve it. He lied to her after he said that he had taken prescription drugs that had caused him to fall asleep at this stop sign, but what later was revealed that he had been drinking before he got into this car, and he, I think, pulled over before he was seen falling asleep at the stop sign, and he lied to her and the press about it, saying it was a prescription drug, but it was actually alcohol, and he clearly deserved the firing. It was not something that a civilian should do, and certainly not the superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, which is, I believe, the 3rd largest police department in the country. I might be wrong about that. But either way, no, he clearly deserved it, and it's sort of shocking news that this happened a couple of weeks before his retirement. He took over the department after the previous superintendent was fired for the Laquan McDonald thing. And I believe there have been, out of the last 6 superintendents, 4 have been discharged or fired for similar reasons. Alright, going to local news. We don't actually have too much local news to go over, but the headline on the Wednesday Journal was third case of whooping cough discovered at OPRF. So, if you have a whooping cough, you might not want to come to school. District 200 officials have discovered a third case of pertussis, or whooping cough, at OakPark and River Forest High School in 2 weeks, prompting them to take extra precautions. This is according to Michael Romaine at the Wednesday Journal. Because this is our third case of pertussis in 2 weeks, our buildings and ground staff are diligently performing extra sweeps to clean and sanitize the building. Gwen Walker-Qualls, District 200 Senior Director of Pupil Personnel Services, sent an email that went out to families on Wednesday morning. So far, 2 students and an adult have been diagnosed with the infection. Anyone can get pertussis, but it can be very dangerous for infants and people with weakened immune systems, the letter states. Family members with pertussis, especially mothers, can spread pertussis to newborns. District 200 officials recommend that if a child has a cough, parents should keep them home from school and activities. If a doctor says that they have a weakened immune system, parents should ask their physician to prescribe antibiotics as soon as possible to prevent whooping cough. Hold on. So, either way, if you have like a weakened immune system, I know a couple kids that do, take some antibiotics before or after going to school, or I think before is probably the better idea, and watch out, and if you have whooping cough, don't go to school. So that's all we have for today. I might do an episode tomorrow on, I think I might want to do an in-depth analysis of Anthony Clark and everything he's done over the past, 3, we'll just do analysis on Anthony Clark and we'll edit some interviews. Either way, thanks so much for listening, and goodbye. Thanks so much for listening. The Lounge with Luke Gilfillan comes out every Saturday and Sunday. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you would be interested in getting notified every time a video comes out, hit the gray bell right next to the subscribe button. Credits, sources, and errors are in the description. If you find an error that I missed, please put it in the comments section. If you are interested in donating to my channel, because I bought recording equipment, which kind of costed a lot, my Patreon, which is a donation site, is in the description. If you have any feedback, put it in the comments section. Toodaloo.